Shalom, Apostle, coming back at you with this truth, giving all praise to Yahweh, by Shem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Kakwadash. And I'm going to entitle this video, Reparations for the Prisoners of Hope. Anyway, this is from an article that was put up by the Washington Examiner. And what I did was I went to Google and I put in the word reparations, and a bunch of sites came up, mainly news sites concerning the candidates for the Democratic Party. Their talking points and campaign promises is to give back to so-called Negroes, African Americans, in the form of reparations. Oh, by the way, I took the number 50 million, which represents, I didn't do any fact checking, but I would say 50 million so-called African Americans, which are Israelites, which is the tribe of Judah mainly, that suffered slavery. You know, they'll tell you, if you go to Google how many African Americans live in America, they may say 12 million, which they've been using that number since the 70s. You know, the population doesn't go up or go down, just stays at 12 million. Well, I put it at 50 million. Like I said, I didn't do any fact checking on it. I just threw that number out there. I said, let's say, for example, and that represents a little more than 10%. I would say, I don't know, 13% maybe, 15, close to 15. Anyway, percent of the population of the United States. So let's go with 50 million so-called blacks and African Americans, which are the Israelites. Let's say they agreed to pay everybody $1 million, because anything less than $1 million would be an insult. You know, what are they going to do? Give you $1,000? Even 500,000 would be an insult. $1 million would be an insult. But let's say they agree, and they agree to the fact that they're going to give every so-called African American whose line goes back to chattel slavery, for parents, let's give them $1 million. So I did the math, going with the fact that let's say there's 50 million of us in this country. They're gonna give each one of us $1 million, which is nothing. Can you imagine how fast Jake giving a check for $1 million? He tax free, just $1 million straight dollars. Do you know how fast Jake will burn through that money? First of all, they're gonna go to the car dealership, and they're gonna look to get the most expensive car or a couple of cars at that dealership. Then they're gonna get a house. The house might a decent house. The house might be 500,000. You know, that's half of your $1 million, and then another 100,000 for the cars, and then the clothes, and then the trips. You'll burn through that money inside of a year. So that's nothing. But anyway, let's say they decided to give every so-called African American $1 million, provided that there's 50 million of us in this country. Do you know how much that is? When you do the math, that's $50 trillion. Where the fuck is the U.S. gonna get $50 trillion? So this is all bullshit, man. This ain't nothing but a campaign promise. Anyway, let me go back into the article. Yeah, this place is becoming a big fucking joke. A big joke. This is the U.S. is the laughing stock of the whole world, and everybody knows that this place is going down. Anyway, let's read this fucking nonsense. Anyway, it says R word, meaning meaning reparations. And by the way, the word reparations comes from the word repair, to repair. And as I read this article, they're going to mention the North American Indians, the Native Americans, about some form of reparation. Well, you don't mention the word reparation or reparations around Gad. Because true reparations for Gad would be you would have to pack the fuck up and leave America. You'd have to give them a substantial amount of money, and you would have to pack up and leave America and go back to the caves. This place is done. If you can't see that this place is done, you're an idiot. A complete idiot. It says R word Dodge, 2020 Democrats. And pretty much all of them, they're pushing this reparation thing, but they don't actually want to use the word reparations. You know, it's thrown at their face, and they don't want to actually use that word. But we got it. Let me read on, man. It says R word Dodge, 2020 Democrats avoid saying reparations. So this right here is, okay, I'm going to read on. It says some Democrats running for the White House in 2020, which is a joke. This line of Democratic candidates is a complete fucking joke. Well, you see why we curse, man. When you come across this bullshit, you know? Anyway, it says, Democrats running for the White House in 2020 have made it clear they support some form of program to make amends to black Americans for more than 200 years of slavery. And how are they going to do that? Like I said, I did the math. We're talking, if there's 50 million of us in this country, they're going to have to gather up $50 trillion. And you can fact check me on that number. Anyway, it says, but there's one word nearly of them, or it should be neither of them, are dodging reparations. Senator Kamala Harris of California, which if she becomes president, man, she's not going to be the president. And then I found out that she's an Edomite. That her father's father on her father's side is an Edomite. And even her father, she made a statement about, smoking weed or whatever the case may be. And her father kind of, denounced her for it, Anyway, it goes on to say, but there's one word nearly of them are dodging reparations. They don't like that word. They don't like the R word. Anyway, it says Senator Kamala Harris, which, by the way, she's married to an Edomite, okay? And she has hatred for so-called black men. There was a case where she was a prosecuting attorney, and she had a lot of Jakes locked up. And when it was time for them to be released, she wanted them to stay because they had some work program in the prison. So they said, if we let them go, then we're going to lose money. So she don't give a damn about Jake. The fact that she married an Edomite man, she don't give a fuck about Jake. All right. Then you got this clown, Cory Booker. All right, which now he's dodging questions about whether he's gay or not. I mean, you know what? This lineup of Democratic candidates may put DJ Trump back into office. That's provided that the Most High don't destroy this place before 2020. Anyway, it said Senator Kamala Harris of California first opened the door to a discussion about reparations this month. She was asked on the radio show that her position is on the controversial issue and indicated she supports some action. What in the fuck does that mean? She supports some action. She's not talking about reparation where you get, a substantial amount of money. It goes on to say America has a history of 200 years of slavery. We know that. Okay, tell us something we don't know. She said, why don't you tell us that you found out that we're the Israelites? We had Jim Crow, and you can even, that's a whole topic right there. The Jim Crow laws. As a matter of fact, let me go into it. And then I'm going to have some scriptures behind this whole, after I finish reading this. But I just want to go into Jim Crow.
This was a wealthy...
Excuse me. Okay, Jim Crow. Do a little Jim Crow definition. Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforce racial segregation in the and this is post slavery, So this hatred, goes on forever, as the scriptures say. It says Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in the southern United States. All were enacted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries by white democratic dominated state legislatures. After the Reconstruction period, the laws were enforced until 1965. Well, we're still under Jim Crow. So it was. It says all were enacted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries by white Democratic-dominated state legislatures. So these were the Democrats that set up the Jim Crow laws. And the predominant party, the party that you so-called Negroes vote under, is the Democratic Party, which is a racist party. Anyway, let's go back. It says America has a history of 200 years of slavery. She said we had Jim Crow. We still have Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America for a very long time. We still have legal segregation in America. We've got to recognize back. We've got to recognize back to that earlier point. People aren't starting out on the same base. Recognize that. Give people a lift up. When asked directly if she's for some kind of reparations, she said, "Yes, I am." But she never used the word herself. Senator Elizabeth Warren, which is a white Gadite, she claimed that she had Gad. She got Gad in her family, and they did a DNA test, and I believe it was less than 1% of Gad. And they're talking about she had high cheekbones, so she's a North American Indian, all right? It says Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts also indicated she favors some sort of action without describing this as reparations. Some sort of action, right? It goes on to say instead she talked about the need to talk about the right way to address it and to make change. So you're going to have a lot of these bird-brained Negroes, which are Israelites. They're going to vote based upon this reparation thing, thinking they're going to get a fat check. You ain't gonna get shit. If any of these Democrats that are speaking half of you receiving some form of reparation, they're not going to talk about it once they're in office. It says when asked about reparations for Native Americans, now you don't want to say Native Americans and reparations in the same sentence, because what you would have to do to repair the ills of the so-called North American Indians, you would have to pack up and you would have to leave America. Every Edomite would have to pack up and they would have to go back to the caves or go back to Europe, which, by the way, Europe was ruled by Jake any damn way. It says she said that should also be part of the conversation. And on Monday night, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, a so-called Jew, was asked about reparations on CNN and whether it was on purpose or not. He also declined to use the word. So that's how politicians operate. It says, what do they mean? Sanders said, when asked about other candidates' position on reparations, this is him, and I quote, I'm not sure that anyone is very clear. What I just said is that I think that we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country. Like, talking in circles, going around, tap dancing around the issue. None of them want to directly deal with the word reparations, because reparations mean you would have to give a large sum of money to the so-called Negroes, and when it comes to the so-called Native Americans, you would have to pack up and leave the world, America, and that would be reparations for the Indians. Can't give them a check, okay? If you gathered all the so-called North American Indians, Native Americans together, and said, let's say there's 10 million of them. I'm just throwing a number out. You would have to give them 100 million each, or at least 10 million each. But that's not good enough. You would have to pack up. True reparations for Gad is you would have to pack up and you have to leave the country, and you're not going to do that. And that's why ultimately this place is going to be destroyed. And true reparations for Jake is for you to be slaves under us. And so reparations is going to come when the Most High delivers us and destroys this place. So now let's read a couple of scriptures. Let's go to Obadiah 1, verse 10. It says, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. And the day that thou stoodest on the other side, and the day that the strangers carried away, which are the Babylonians, they took us down, and you were a part of it. I'm going to show you that the Edomites burnt down Jerusalem, and then they, in certain parts of Jerusalem, they just took over and started living there, just like they're doing now. They did that back then. It says, in the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces meaning riches, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast as one of them. So you received benefits from what the Babylonians did to us. You was on the other side, just eventually you was living in Jerusalem. Because we're going to read about the decree when Cyrus, gave the decree that we should build rebuild Jerusalem, and then later Darius confirmed it. So we were able to build Jerusalem by the fact of Cyrus being in power and taking down the Babylonians. It says 12 verse, but thou shouldst not have looked on the day of thy brother, and the day that he became a stranger. Now that proves that the Israelites were also known as strangers. It said, neither shouldst thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah. So when we were being destroyed, killed, heads chopped off, being killed and slaughtered, you rejoiced at that. So now you're mad because we're rejoicing at your coming downfall. It says, over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction, neither shouldst thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. It says, thou shouldst not have entered into the gate of my people. And like I said, they entered into the gates and they lived there. When we were pushed out, they started living in Jerusalem in the day of their calamity. Yeah, thou shouldst not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. So they laid hands on our substance. So you devils got a lot to pay for. 14 verse, neither shouldst thou have stood in the crossway to cut off, kill those of his that did escape. Neither shouldst thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. So you delivered up Israelites to the Babylonians to go into captivity or to be put to death. So you devils got a lot to pay for. 15 verse, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, all the nations. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Now, when did this happen, vocab? Because this clown, this Edomite, German Edomite, John Mark Reiser, a.k.a. Vocab Malone, he said that I asked him on Saturday past, when did Obadiah 118 take place? And it clearly tells you what happened or what's going to happen to these Edomites. He said, oh, they were mingled together. Where's that in the scriptures? It says, 16 verse, for as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathens drink. And then that immediately what should come to mind is Jeremiah 49. Anyway, I'm going to jump right to the 18th verse. It says, in the house of Jacob shall be a fire, in the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them. Who shall kindle in them? The kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. When they come back together, they're gonna come together and they're gonna burn up the Edomites. And the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, utterly destroy them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. So now we're going to go to 1 Ezra 4, verse 45. It says, thou also have vowed to build up the temple which the Edomites burned when Judah was made desolate by the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans are the Babylonians. 49th verse. 1 Ezra 49. Moreover, he wrote for all the Jews that went out of his realm up into Jewry concerning their freedom, that no officer, no ruler, no lieutenant, nor treasurer should forcibly enter into their doors. So we were protected. 50th verse. and that all the country which they hold should be free without tribute, meaning we didn't have to pay taxes. So this is the decree that was given by Cyrus, and then later Darius was the one that actually made this happen based on what Cyrus had said. It says, and that the Edomites should give over the villages of the Jews which then they held. So that's the proof right there that they were actually living in Jerusalem. Let me read that again. It says, and that the Edomites should give over the villages of the Jews which then they held. Now I'm going to go from there to Ezekiel 35, and I'm going to start from the top. Normally we go to the 5th verse. I'm going to start from the top so you can know it's talking about Edomites. You know, if you go directly to the 5th verse, that's not talking about Edomites. Okay, let's start from the 1st verse. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir. Those are the dwelling place of the Edomites, which they don't dwell there, live there right at this point, and prophesy against it. So it's talking about a people before it's talking about a place. And say unto it, thus saith the Lord, the Most High, behold, O Mount Seir, which are the Edomites, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. So what part of the land is the Most High going to make most desolate? He's going to make America most desolate. This is the new land of Edom. It says, 4th verse, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. So what cities is it talking about? It's talking about the cities of America. All the cities of America will be laid waste. It says the 5th verse, and this is the reason why the Most High is going to do it, because thou hast had a perpetual, everlasting hatred, and have shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Now that goes back to Obadiah 1, which during the time of the Babylonians. And it's also deals with post-slavery, because after we were so-called emancipated, you were supposed to back up off of us, but you set up a group called the KKK, and you had Jim Crow laws and so forth. So this is what you're going to pay for. And now that we have received some type of fame from you Edomites, anytime the word Israelite comes up, you call us, first of all, you call us black Israelites, and you say it with disdain and hate. It goes on to say, therefore, as I live, saith the Lord, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee, since thou has not hated blood. Since thou has not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. 37th verse. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate. So what's the new Mount Seir? America. Because no one's dwelling in Mount Seir. And cut off from it him that passeth out and that returneth. Ain't nobody really going down to Mount Seir. Okay, it goes on to say in the 8th verse, and I will fill his mountains with his slain men, and thy hills, and in thy valleys, and in all thy rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword. And the ultimate sword is the missiles. The Most High said in Isaiah 34, his sword shall be bathed in heaven. And his sword are those missiles. I will make thee perpetual desolation, and that's America, and thy cities shall not return, and ye shall know that I am the Lord, Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine. Now, what does it mean by two nations and two countries? At one time, Israel was split up into two separate kingdoms and two land masses. And what happened was Esau got that whole land. And we will possess it, whereas the Lord was there. '11th verse, therefore as I live, saith the Lord, I will even do according to thine anger and according to thine envy, which thou hast used out of thy hatred against them, and I will make thyself known among them when I have judged thee. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord Yahweh, and that I have heard all thy blasphemies which thou hast. Yeah, the part of the blasphemy was the what do you call that, the Renaissance period, when you in hate destroyed the images of the true Israelites, which are people of color, browns, different shades of brown, not black, and you put up images and icons and frescoes and mosaics of yourself, which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume. And then I read earlier about how you started living in the land of Jerusalem, and you're living in Jerusalem in the land of Israel right now. And 1948, the state of Israel is not the fulfillment of the Israelites coming back. It says, thus with your mouth ye have boasted against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. Thus saith Yahweh the Most High, when the whole earth rejoices, I will make thee desolate. It says, rejoice thou heavens and holy apostles and prophets in Revelation 12, the 12th chapter. The 15th verse, last verse, as thou didst rejoice at the inheritance of the house of Israel, because it was desolate, so will I do unto thee. Thou shalt be desolate, O Mount Seir, and all Idumea, all Edomites, even all of it. And they shall know that I am the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Let me go to bear with me for a minute. Now, I gave the title of this video, Reparations. Reparations to the prisoners of hope. Anyway, I'm going to read this in Zechariah 9, verse 12. It says, turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. And the prisoners of hope are Israelites. Because you have a lot of jakes, they're going to vote for some Democratic candidate in the hopes that they'll receive a check. And it's not going to happen. It says, even today your reparations is going to come from the Most High. And true reparations are for them that enslave you to be enslaved themselves. Isaiah 14 verse 2. And you will rule over your oppressors. You know. And they will be our captives whose captives we were. That's true reparation. It says 12 verse. Zechariah 9 verse 12. Turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee. When I have bent Judah for me, fill the bowl with Ephraim. And that's another thing that this so-called white man, the Edomites, hate, is the fact that the tribes are coming together. You see, it's common to see Jake dealing with like a Jake man, dealing with a woman from one of the so-called Latin tribes. It says, like this guy, Little B-Hop. I don't know if y'all keep up with boxing, but Little B-Hop is an Issacharite. You know? And now you might think that his mother's Issachar and his father's Jake. No, his mother's Jake, Judah, and his father's an actual Issacharite, but he got the swag of a Jake. He's dark-skinned, and he got the swag of a Jake. And a man can fight, you know. And I see him being a future world champ in the near future. This is Little B-Hop. You take a look at him, go to the video, look him up, and you're going to say, that's a Jake, that's a Judite. But his father is an actual Issacharite, and his mother is a Judite. So for all you clowns out there that say those Latin tribes are not Israelites, well, take a look at him, Little B-Hop. Anyway, it says, 13 verse, when I have bent Judah for me, fill the bowl with Ephraim, and raise up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece. Greece talking about the Edomites that inhabited the land of which now is called Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man. So the Most High is going to make us an army. See, now we're a spiritual army. When it says in Ezekiel 37 is an exceeding great army, well, the army is talking about when we go out there on the highways and the byways and we teach this word. 14 verse, and the Lord shall be seen over them. What is he going to be in? He's going to be in ships. And this right here, when you read this scripture, your mind should jump to Daniel 7 verse 9. It says, and the Lord shall be seen over them, and those are the ships. Those are the so-called UFOs. Those are the chariots of Israel, which is going to deliver the elect of the children of Israel, 1/3 of Israel. And his arrow shall go forth as a lightning. And that's talking about lasers coming out of the ships while this place is being destroyed by missiles. And you can also go to Second Ezra's, the 13th chapter, and read the whole chapter. And it tells you how the Lord is going to be on top of what looked like to Ezra's a mountain. So Ezra looked down to see where he got that mountain from. And it wasn't a mountain, it was an actual ship. It says, and his arrow shall go forth as a lightning, and the Lord, the Most High, shall blow the trumpet. In the book of Revelation, it speaks about the 7 trumpets. It tells you in Job, I believe it's Job 5 verse 19, it speaks about troubles between the 6 and the 7 trouble, we will be out of here. It says, and shall go with whirlwinds of the south. The whirlwinds are talking about the so-called UFOs. It says, the Lord, 15 verse, the Lord of hosts shall defend them, and they shall devour and subdue with sling stones, and they shall drink and make a noise as do wine, and they shall be filled with like bowls as the corners of an altar. And the Lord, their power, shall save them, And that's how we're going to be saved. We're going to be delivered. And the only part of Israel that will be delivered are the one third, the elect of Israel. In that day, as the flock of his people, for they shall be as the stones of a crown, lifted up as an ensign upon his land. And when you see these so-called UFOs, I actually seen one of them turn into a whirlwind, go from one shape to another shape, turn into a whirlwind, and you see the so-called spectrum of the rainbow of colors, and that ship just disappeared into the sky. And this was back in the 80s. It says, for how great is his goodness and how great is his beauty. Corn shall make the young men cheerful, and new wine the maids. And that's talking about the kingdom, and the kingdom is going to be on earth. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom.